Good day, ma'am. Good day, classmates. I am Jihan A. Bahada and I am with my co-reporter, Ms. Rachel Avila. So today we are here to report about Chapter 4, Subsection 1, Application of Payments. Application of Payments. Application of payments is the designation of the debt to which should be applied the payment made by a debtor who has various debts of the same kind in favor of one and the same creditor. So, in the Chapter 4, Subsection 1, Application of Payments, matakol ang Article 1252. So, in the Article 1252, he who has various debts of the same kind in favor of one and the same creditor may declare at the time of making the payment to which of them the same must be applied, unless the parties so stipulate or when the action of payment is made by the party for whose benefit the term has been constituted. Application shall not be made as to debts which are not yet due. If the debtor accepts from the creditor a receipt in which an application of the payment is made, the former cannot complain of the same unless there is a cause for invalidating the contract. Ang ibig sabihin ay siya na may iba't ibang mga pagkakautang sa parehong uri na pabor sa isa at sa parehong pinagkakautangan ay maaaring magpahayag sa oras ng pagbabayad kung kanino sa kanila ang parehong dapat ilapat, maliban kung itinakda ng mga partido o kapag ang aplikasyon ng pagbabayad ay ginawa ng partido kung saan ang kapakanan ay nabuo ang termino. Ang aplikasyon ay hindi dapat gawin sa mga utang na hindi pa dapat bayaran. So, in the Chapter 4, Subsection 1, Application of Payments Example, X owes Y the following obligation. In the first obligation, 5,000 pesos with due date of January 15, 2020, and second obligation, 10,000 pesos with due date of February 14, 2020. And third obligation, 20,000 pesos with due date of April 1, 2020. Fourth obligation, 2 sacks of Bordagol rice due on April 15, 2020. And the fifth obligation, 50,000 pesos due on July 1, 2020. For example, today is May 1, 2020 and X has 5,000 pesos which he intends to pay his obligation. There is no application of payment on the fourth obligation because it will only be extinguished later on by delivering rice of the same kind, quality and quantity. There is also no application of payment on the fifth obligation as it is not yet due. What if X wants to apply the 5,000 pesos to the obligation which will mature on January 15, 2020, but Y wants that it will be deducted on the 2,000 pesos obligation? The rules on application of payment will solve this predicament. Applying the rules on application of payment, X has a preferential right to apply. Thus, the 5,000 pesos will be deducted from the first obligation so as to totally extinguish the said obligation. If X does not want to make use of such preferential right, then Y will designate which debt is to be paid, so that if Y chooses the third obligation, then the 5,000 pesos will be deducted from the 20,000 pesos, leaving a balance of 15,000 pesos. Take note that the rule is complete payment. However, this will be an exception because Y accepted the payment. If X and Y did not make use of the application of payment, then the third rule may be used, and that is, it will be applied to the debt which is most onerous to the debtor. In this case, there is no debt that is most onerous to the debtor because there is no factual circumstance to indicate that the obligation is burdensome like guarantee, surety, pledge, real estate, mortgage, chattel mortgage, or interest. Hence, if the first obligation is secured by a pledge involving a cell phone, the second obligation is secured by a guarantee, and the third obligation contains a stipulation as to interest, then it should be mentioned in the facts of the case on what is the most onerous obligation to the debtor. Like, if the debtor wants to have the cell phone, then he might extinguish the first obligation so that he can acquire the cell phone which is in the possession of Y, being a real contract, perfected by delivery of the object to the pledge. If he wants to lessen his interest, then he might apply his payment to the third obligation. If there is no debt which is most onerous to the debtor, then last rule may apply. The payment of 5,000 pesos shall be applied to all of the debts proportionately.
Requisites of application of payment. There must be only one debtor and only one creditor. There must be two or more debts of the same kind. All of the debts must be due, and the amount paid by the debtor must not be sufficient to cover the total amount of all the debts. There are four rules on application of payment. The first one is the right to designate the debt to which the payment shall be applied belongs primarily to the debtor. He may declare at the time of making the payment to which of them the same must be applied. The second rule is if the debtor does not apply payment, the creditor may designate which debt is paid by specifying in the receipt. The third rule is if the creditor did not apply or if application is void, the debt which is the most onerous to the debtor among those due shall be deemed to have been satisfied. The fourth rule, which is also the last rule, is if the debts due are of the same nature and burden, the payment shall be applied to all of them proportionately.
Note, where the debtor has not expressly elected any particular obligation to which the payment should be applied, the application by the creditor in order to be valid and lawful depends upon by his expressing such application in the corresponding receipt and upon the debtor's assent, shown by his acceptance of the receipt without protest. This is the import of paragraph 2, article 1252 of the new civil code. So, if the debtor accepts from the creditor a receipt in which an application of the payment is made, the former cannot complain of the same unless there is a cause of invalidating the contract. Ultimately, therefore, the application by a creditor depends upon the debtor acquiescence thereto. So into Article 1253, if the debt produces interest, payment of the principal shall not be deemed to have been made until the interest have been covered. Ang ibig sabihin ay kung ang utang ay lumilikha ng interes, ang pagbabayad ng principal ay hindi dapat ituring na nagawa hanggang sa ang mga interes ay mabayaran. So, Article 1254. When the payment cannot be applied in accordance with the preceding rules, or if application cannot be inferred from other circumstances, the debt which is most onerous to the debtor among those due shall be deemed to have been satisfied. If the debts due are of the same nature and burden, the payment shall be applied to all of them proportionately. So the above article explains that in case the debtor does not make the application of payment, nor the creditor does not also state in which application of payment is made, then application is made by operation of law. That is, the debt which is most onerous to the debtor. However, if the debts due are of the same nature and burden, meaning there is no debt which is most onerous, the payment shall be applied to all of them proportionately. Examples of debt which is most onerous to the debtor. Number one, where there are various debts which are due and they were incurred at different dates, the oldest are most onerous. Number two, where one bears interest and the other does not, the former is more onerous. Number three, where one is secured and the other is not, the former is more onerous. Number four, where the debtor is bound as principal in one and as a guarantor or surety in another, the former is more onerous. Number 5, where the debtor is bound as a solidary debtor in one and as the sole debtor in another, the former is more onerous. So that would be all for our report about the Chapter 4, Subsection 1 application of payment. So, thank you for watching and listening.